you asked about this a little bit during the last thing, but what do you think is the strength of your non-conference schedule this year? How does it give your team an opportunity to get better?
Well, I think two things. One, we get going very quickly with the preseason NIT, so you got a lot of games, so you'll have a lot of knowledge of different styles, how your team reacts to that, how quickly you can prepare and turn around for the next game. So we'll get basketball IQ, commitment, all those things that, if you have games spread out, you're going to take longer to get those answers. We've got some tremendous road challenges. When you look at NC State, who was a 1 seed last year, when you look at South Carolina, those two right off the bat. South Dakota State has a great home environment as well. We'll get challenged, and there'll be a ton of adversity pre-Christmas for this team.
And obviously you've got Yoki back. What are you looking to develop in her game this season? Like where are you looking to take her this season?
Well, I think she just needs to continue to get better. I mean, everybody always asks me, what do you want to develop in her? Well, I think there's a couple things. One, she's been a great end of offense player. She's a high level, the only player in the NCAA to shoot over 60% from the field and over 80% from the free throw line. She needs to continue to improve her physicality. People are going to bring extra help. They're employing different strategies to frustrate her. They're going to be extra physical. They're going to make officials call things, so she has to keep her poise in that. Last year, foul trouble was an issue. She got frustrated with some of those things, so she needs to take that growth. She's a lot harder to stop on the floor, and she has to respect. It's a sign of respect, the people that are employing all these different strategies against her to get her out of the game. We've talked about, when they do push her off the block, can we still facilitate offense through her? It's an area that she's got to continue to get better at. And so those are the areas we've spent a lot of time in the offseason on.
And speaking of your forwards, how is Taylor Lauterbach advanced in the offseason, and then where are you looking to go with her this season?
Yeah, Taylor's a really hard worker. I think she's a much better player than she was a year ago. She needs to be more physical. Needs to be stronger in the paint. She still is getting out of there more than I like right now. It's an area that in our offense, our centers have to make that defender make a decision. Are they going to play dead behind, or are they going to front? And that sets up everything else from there. So right now with her getting that spot established, I expect her to be able to come in for Lee and not have as big a drop-off as we had as her freshman year. And she's trying to grow into that.
So as a coach, you got a player that doesn't naturally want to be super aggressive. How do you get them to do that? Is it just...
I just think you keep putting them through it every day, and sometimes you just got to lead them to a spot maybe that, to get better. I think you overload it. In that you overload it in practice with extra physicality. You can't go away from that, and you just keep talking to her about what she can do to counter that. And Taylor will do it very well for a couple minutes, and then she'll creep back into the habit of getting out of there. So we just got to keep working on it.
And then you lost Chrissy over the offseason.
I mean, it is.
What's the plan to kind of replace her offense and her shot creation?
I like our team in terms of just balance. We've got a lot of options, I think, at the spot. When you look at the progress of Everett, you look at the progress of Goodrich, you look at the addition of the Glenn twins, you look at Serena Sundell. I think there are a lot of options, and I expect that group to.
How did that happen again?
They've got a high basketball IQ. That's been probably the most pleasing thing of the fall is watching them understand where the ball needs to move to and move it there quickly. And it hasn't, while it takes some coaching to get them to do that, their instincts are to do that. And so that's been really pleasing to see. So I think we'll have a lot of options from the 1 to the 3 spot to utilize.
then we saw some flashes from Jada Thorpe. I think
Jada Moore.
Yeah, Jada Moore. You know, names.
Yeah.
I just know her as Jada when I look at the roster. But we saw some flashes from Jada at the end of the season last year. How's she coming along, and do you think she's going to be a major player early this season?
Well, I appreciate you bringing her up because I should have mentioned her one of the first in that list. So that she had a tremendous scrimmage the other day. I had 20 points. Is playing through some things much better, and what I mean by playing through, she's the kind of player that burned the candle quickly. She would stamina wasn't as good on the floor, and that's been an area that I've talked to her about. Her defense is much better. I think she's going to make a big impact. I should have brought her up first because out of all the players, she probably has grown from August 1 to where we're at today more than anybody.
You brought two really good players along with you, in Yoki and in Emily. What do you think are each of their best strengths off the court, or I guess outside of their level of play?
I think both of them are just really good people. They're both just really steady. You know what you're going to get. There aren't a whole lot of surprises with either of them. They come into practice every day. They're ready to go. I think Emily has really improved her communication. Her basketball IQ was one of the things that last year we had to have on the floor. She knew where the ball needed to go. She understood time. She understood score. Her leadership in terms of transition D and getting others in the right spot has really grown this year. Both of them are players that I can trust either of them. If I put them into a huddle right now, I could trust that what's getting said in that huddle is going to be positive, going to be purposeful, and it's going to be taken well by their teammates because they understand that part of leadership as well.
So in the few years I've covered this team, it seems like you've always had somebody who can be kind of your extension on the floor, whether that was Kayla Goff or Peyton Williams. Who do you think that's going to be this year? And I guess what are you looking forward to from your team as a whole? Is it hard when you've got?
Yeah, I think the challenge we have, Nathan, is just that Lee is that player, but that's a little more different as a center having that spot. You know, Sundell, I think, will grow into that. She's kind of learning that as we go. I saw her make really good progress late today in practice. We practiced early this morning before, and there was a part in practice where she didn't understand it, and I gave her a lengthy explanation of what she needed to do. And it was really good to watch her do that the last three scrimmages that we had this morning. Simone Goodrich, she started to understand that as well. I expect them to split time at the point guard spot. So both of them are growing in the role. Serena only being in the program now 4 or 5 months. But she's got a great basketball feel. She understands the game. She understands it better each day that she's on the floor.
So you've got two true freshmen who are twins.
Yep.
Have you ever coached players that were siblings before or twins before? Is it different? Is it weird?
Well, sometimes it is, but in this case it hasn't been at all. And what I mean by that is both of them are different people, and in that. Jay is more reserved than Briley. Briley's always bouncing 100 miles an hour, bouncing off the walls, never stands still. Jay's very reserved, both very talented players, both very competitive players. I've coached two other sets of twins, and sometimes they would get into it on the floor. Briley and Jay really haven't had that, you know, and they've got a good connection with each other, obviously, right? I kind of kid them sometimes when they don't. I'm like, aren't you supposed to know what she's doing before she does it? And they're like, well, it doesn't always work that way, Coach. But they've got a good demeanor about them.
That's my hometown.
They've come in. Both are really got an opportunity to really help us on the floor. Both, once again, I talk about having a high basketball IQ, but they're also highly competitive, so they've had a good fall.
What
I
was your
noticed
initial thought of
during the
comparing Kansas
round
winners
table
to Minnesota
that it seems
winners?
like a lot of the coaches who have been in this league for a long time kind of know each other pretty well and joke around with each other. What's that like, kind of having that community? You come to an event like this and you see, people who have been coaches longer than this kid's been alive in this league. What's that like?
Well, yeah, and a lot of us have known each other before we were in the league together. So, all of us, I think there's a great respect of the coaches in this league. I certainly respect all the coaches in this league. I respect what they've done in their career. I know what they've done for young people. And so, yeah, we don't get together enough, I mean, that's gotten harder over the years of getting coaches together. The camaraderie maybe isn't what it was 15 years ago, but in this particular group, I think it's pretty good. And every league's a little bit different, but I would say that each of us, there's not a ton of us in terms that have been in it for as long as we have and gone up against each other. So there is a high level of respect of every coach in this league.
And then there's a few new faces.
Yeah.
Did you know any of them coming in? And I guess what's your perspective on them and facing new blood?
Yeah, well, Jenny did a great job at Drake, so known her for a while. We played Drake in the NCAA tournament maybe 3-4 years ago in the first round, so she's had excellent teams at Drake, so know her style, know that she's been very successful. Nikki, her husband was a coach at Arkansas, at Louisville, coached against Tom. I've known Nikki when she was an assistant, and then obviously with the Dream last year prior to Baylor. So yeah, I've got a great familiarity with both of the new coaches. So they'll add to this league. They're replacing obviously some outstanding basketball coaches, but they're outstanding basketball coaches in their own right.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, thank you, Nathan.
Yeah, how are you feeling about the depth of the team overall, and then possibly with just the health of the team going into the season as well?
Yeah, I feel good about that. I think we've got a lot of options. As I said earlier, they've all had really good moments. Now, in particular, the young players have had the highs and lows that you expect, so they got to level that off. But they've all had really good moments, so I feel good about the depth of this team. I feel good about. I keep preaching to this team that there's a standard that you have to be ready to play. It's not my job to give you minutes. It's your job to show me that you're ready to have those minutes. And some days they do, some days they don't. But I think they're starting to get it, and hopefully we'll see in the next couple weeks that get even better.
And then you brought up leadership. Obviously, you bring these two for a reason. Who else do you think on this team are you going to see step up in a leadership role this season?
I think all of them have been solid in terms of collectively taking a little bit of a piece of it. They've all, I think Simone Goodrich is a quiet leader, but she's becoming more trusted as a player to play harder. And really, Simone really has done some really good things. The 3-on-3 competition gave her a burst of confidence that we probably wouldn't have had if not had that competition. Serena Sundell, she's kind of, I call them Serena-isms because she says the obvious a lot of times. Like I'll say, hey, you need to do that better. And she says, yeah, I don't do that very well. Yeah, I know that. I need you to protect this better on this play. But she makes the adjustment. And that's the key, does she make the adjustment? And she does. She is learning to be more vocal. Briley, for a player that's kind of all over the place, for a transition D player, she talks more than anybody not named Emily. She really does. I mean, if I were to say, who can I trust to talk on transition D, she's going to be 1 and Briley's going to be 2. Now, Briley may not know what she's saying, but she's talking. all right? And that's the first step. So, and I think she usually does know what she's saying, quite honestly. She's got a lot of energy to her. So I think the depth will be a strength, but I'm anxious to see who really earns the playing time here in the coming weeks.
And then with Yoki possibly getting, more attention down low, how are you going to plan to attack that and then possibly use that to create opportunities for other players?
I don't really think it's possible for her to get more attention. I don't. I mean, I've said this in a lot of numerous ways. I mean, last year everybody imposed different strategies to get her off the floor, whether it be, take the cheap charge in the middle of the floor, which you've heard me say I don't believe belongs in our game, whether it be, grab her and make the official call it. I mean, those are all things that they're going to do, whether it be, screening action, be more physical, bump. All those things are things that she dealt with all last year. So I think the key for her is to not get frustrated. She picked up some frustration fouls last year. I think she learned from that. She's been much better in practice at avoiding those things. I've watched her avoid. She doesn't miss very often, but I've watched her avoid going over the back when she does miss so that she doesn't pick up a cheap one that way. She's going to pick up fouls just by playing hard and doing her job. That's going to be the nature of just playing hard. So I've seen good growth in that.
So going through the season,
you guys got a 60-minute special going on. I'm expecting to see this, live, 60 minutes or something.
I'll try to keep it short then. But once you reach the end of the season, looking back, what would a successful season look like?
NCAA tournament. Yeah, I mean that's a goal every year, and that's going to be the goal. That's going to be the goal. That's going to be the standard of our program. And now I think there's a lot of ways, but that from a winning and losing perspective, we want to get to the tournament. When we get there, we believe we can advance. So that's going to be it every year.
Awesome. Good.
Thanks, guys.
Cool.
Hope that was enough.